To be honest, the title of the video is just bait because the DLC is amazing and I highly recommend it. People usually want to watch videos that they agree with, so the best way to attract people who thinks that the DLC sucks is by misleading them a bit with titles and thumbnail. Shadow the Erdtree is really good, so for this video I'm going to gush about it and explain what makes it good and what can be improved upon in my opinion. The first thing I want to talk about are the NPCs in the DLC. They are great, from Ansbach to Tolier, Freya, Lita, the forever sad Moor, and the famous Egon with his harpoons. I like that their quests are easier to follow than the NPC quests in the base game. I never had an issue with any of them because they would inform you of the area that they were going, like Tolier does. Or you find them in areas you would eventually check out, like the Shadow Keep. In the base game, good luck finding Millicent after the Caelid part of her quest, and good luck finding Hyeta after you initially meet her, because without looking up a guide, they can literally be anywhere in the lands between. They don't tell you where they are heading off to, and with how big the base game is, you can very much miss them completely, or skip out on parts of their dialogue and quests, like I did with Patches my first playthrough back in 2022. Now, I'm not saying the way they did their quests in the base game is bad. In fact, I know that FromSoft has always been obscure with their NPC quest design, so it's to be expected from them. But I do like what they did with the NPCs in the DLC. Their quests are easier to follow, and it becomes pretty important to do the quests because near the end of the DLC, you will have a full-on fight with Lita and her allies. And unless you want the challenge of facing a 1v5 to 3 alone, I'd recommend getting some allies to fight with you because the enemy NPCs are no joke. Another reason why the NPCs in Shadow of the Erdtree are great is because they can give you some really important info about the world of Elden Ring and the Shadowlands. I learned about Balin the Dragons, Miquella's plan, and why Melania fought Radahn during the Shattering. I also learned about why Marika abandoned her child Mesmer after she ordered him to decimate the Hornsent, which also let us know why her Golden Order hates the Omen. And Ansbach pretty much spoiled the last boss for me before I even got to them, so there's that too. I didn't need to look up a guide to get this info from the NPCs. Instead, I was able to naturally get it by just playing the game. So I hope with the next FromSoft game, they use what they did from Shadow of the Erdtree and bring it to the next Souls game, because in my opinion, how they handled the NPCs in the DLC is perfect. Also, the big battle with them at the end was great. And I love that the NPCs have more dialogue too. I mean, that's how we got Egon's great lines about, curse you Baal and all that. Now, the next topic that I want to broach is the Realm of Shadow in this DLC. I think it's a great improvement over the Lands Between that we see in the base game. The reason I feel this way is because the base game's landmass is designed a lot like other open world games, which isn't a bad thing. But the best way I can describe the new landmass in Shadow of the Erdtree is if Dark Souls 1 had a baby with Elden Ring. Now, I know it isn't exactly a one-to-one comparison, but I like how the new landmass is built more vertical and connected, rather than how the Lands Between is more horizontal and spread. In the DLC, everything is more connected to each other. In fact, it surprised me by how much stuff is actually in the game with this DLC. The map for the DLC is very deceptive because you think the Realm of Shadow is comparable to Limgrave. But really, after exploring it, I think it's more comparable to say it's Limgrave, Caelid, and maybe Lunaria. I don't want to overestimate it, but the DLC does have a lot, and for a first playthrough it took me 20 plus hours to beat, which is how long it usually takes me to beat Dark Souls 1 casually. I also have to gush about the art design of the Land of Shadow. I love the mountain area where Bel resides. The constant lightning, wind, and just epicness of the area is great. I also love the coast area with all the blue flowers. That place was legitimately beautiful, and I was shocked to see how it was stunning. Shaman Village in the Winterlands is another beautiful place, especially at night when the little minor Erdtree is glowing gold with all the flowers around it. Lastly, I love the horror vibes I got from the Abyssal Woods. Seeing the message that Torrent is too scared to come out was crazy. And the Bloodborne vibes I got from the whole place, with how dark and desolate it was, it made me want more areas like this in Elden Ring, or just Souls games in general. I also love the little survival horror point with the winter lanterns. It would be so intense when I touched a flower and they would be alerted that I was there for a second. It was a neat idea to have an enemy that you can't kill traditionally, so you either learn to parry or do what I did and hide. I wouldn't mind seeing stuff like that expanded in the future in a indirect Bloodborne sequel like Dark Souls is to Demon Souls. For the next topic, I want to talk about the DLC bosses. But I'm not going to go too far into the topic, since that's another video I have planned now that I've officially beaten them all. But what I will say is that the people who have complained that the bosses have too many combos, are too hard, are difficult to be difficult, or complain that you need summons to beat them, let me just say, you guys need to get over yourselves and get good. Like I said in the last video, you have more tools than ever to beat them, like physic flasks, jumping, which is insanely powerful, I was abusing it against them, a whole crafting system you can use, Ashes of War, insane amount of build variety that you can constantly change if you need to, as long as you have larva tiers, and you also have an endless amount of guides and hitless runners you can check out to see how they do it if you need the help. I have beaten all 10 Remembrance bosses in Bale, using a strength build, dual-wielding great axes. I used no summons or shield, and the only tools I used were jumping, the Ash of War Bloodhound step, and the occasional physic flask. And I was able to do it, so if I can do it, you can too. You just need to figure out what tools you need to beat the boss, and get it done. And if you don't want to use the tools given to you by FromSoft, that's fine, but you need to realize that you're doing it to yourself if you're struggling. These bosses are completely fair, they're challenging, they're in-game content, and honestly, all of them are pretty fantastic. I especially like the last boss in particular. He's just insane. The only real thing that I wish FromSoft did differently in the DLC is the Shadow Tree fragments and Revered Spirit Ash. I don't mind that they are in the DLC, and I like how you need them to level up in the Shadow Realm. It's a good way to keep level 400 plus players from steamrolling the new content. But instead of having to find them in the open world, I wish it was more like Sekiro, where progression is tied to the boss battles, since that's why most people play the Souls games in my opinion. Now let me know what you guys think. Does Shadow the Erdtree suck, or is it great like I believe it is? Let me know what you think in the comments, and...
I'm sorry, sir. It's time for you to leave.